I can definitely, oh, there we go.
There you go.
I could definitely project, but if people online are to hear me. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for this session this morning. Today we're going to be talking about building bridges between communities and states through water tenure. We have a really exciting program for today, and I'm lucky enough to be able to help facilitate this session along with my colleague, Mr. John Wakanda. I'm Jessica Troell. I am a senior attorney, and I direct the International Water Program at the Environmental Law Institute, and I'm delighted to be here today. Can we get the next slide? Just going to really quickly walk you through the program.
There you go.
There we go. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Wonderful. So after this, we're going to have some opening remarks from Silke Stahlkamp with the German government. And after that, we will have a very brief presentation from my colleague Benjamin Kirsch from the FAO, who's going to introduce us to this exciting new global dialogue on the responsible governance of water tenure. And then we have some incredible panelists who are going to share their water tenure experiences and insights with us. And we're going to have a round of questions with them, followed by a couple of brief presentations, then another round with our panelists, and we're going to open it up to you all. And we hope that you're able to share your experiences and insights with us during this, what we hope to be a very interactive session. So thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you may be. My name is John Wakanda. I work for the Nature Conservancy in the United States. I am a indigenous person from the Pueblo of Asleta, which is in New Mexico. Honored to be here. I do want to say that it's certainly a privilege, honor to join you all today to talk about water tenure. And I just wanted to make sure that today we're going to emphasize the role and legal recognition, the role and the importance of legal recognition of indigenous people, Afro-descendant peoples, local communities, and women who often are not treated equitable in history, in circumstances when water tenure, water law, water rights are being developed, recognized, and implemented. So this is very broad. And we want to make sure we explain very well that this is what we mean about social equity, equity in how water is being managed, that we have the decision space, recognition, and ability to honor everybody's needs and should be recognizing everybody's needs in developing laws and water management across the world. So. I have the honor of introducing Silke, and you're ready to, there you are, to say some opening remarks. And I'll introduce her. Is that correct? Get my notes here. Okay, thank you. Silke is the deputy head of the Climate and Water Unit at the German Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture in Berlin, Germany. It's okay. I got that. Okay, thank you. Use that? Whatever you feel comfortable. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, John, Jessica, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those joining online. Thank you very much for having me and giving me the opportunity to provide opening remarks on behalf of the German Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture. It's a huge pleasure to be here today and to promote this crucial issue. With 2.3 billion people living in water-stressed countries and floods causing significant agricultural losses, sustainable water management is essential. The situation is expected to worsen, particularly for vulnerable groups and women, given the negative impacts of climate change and increasing global demand for water. Agriculture, which uses 72% of global freshwater must play a central role in addressing these challenges. Your presence here today and your dedication to addressing legitimate water tenure are truly remarkable and desperately needed. I want to take a moment to express our gratitude for your commitment. It is very much appreciated. And I hope today's event will encourage you to continue your efforts. Since 2018, Germany has supported FAO in its efforts to achieve fair and equitable access to and distribution of limited water resources. FAO and partners in member countries and civil society, with the support of Germany, are spearheading efforts to improve understanding about water tenure, its definition, assessment, and role in improving food security. It is crystal clear. We need to highlight the fact access to clean drinking water is a human right. At the same time, water is an essential resource for agricultural production. And this addresses another right, the right to food. The German government strongly supports the progressive realization of the right to adequate food, and therefore the UN Committee on World Food Security, CFS, based in Rome, whose vision is the right to food. Inspired by the VGGT, the CFS flagship product on the responsible governance of land tenure, FAO has embarked on organizing a global dialogue on water tenure. It was a significant milestone that the global dialogue was backed by a COAC mandate in 2022. COAC, that's the Committee on Agriculture in FAO. The dialogue is a multi-stakeholder platform that aims to identify principles for the responsible governance of water resources in an inclusive process. We kindly invite FAO member states and their delegations to join the process of the global dialogue on water tenure. This global dialogue on water tenure is also in the center of ScaleWatt, an ongoing FAO project which has been funded by Germany since last autumn. The project will carry out activities to support the global dialogue by scaling up capacities for responsible water governance tenure. National water tenure arrangements will, for example, be reviewed in the pilot countries of Colombia and Thailand, and national multi-stakeholder dialogues will be set up. It is also worth mentioning that the expert network that organized today's session here in Stockholm was initiated by the ScaleWatt project. To the members of this expert network and to all FAO colleagues, thank you for all your hard work. In particular, I want to thank our esteemed colleague, Benjamin Kirsch. It is a pleasure to work with you, Ben, and to benefit from your knowledge and experience. As we look ahead, I encourage all of you pushing forward. Challenges in water governance are complex, but remember, every obstacle is an opportunity for improvement. Together, we have the strength to contribute to coherent water tenure arrangements that benefit everyone. With your continued effort, we can ensure food security, protect livelihoods, and safeguard natural ecosystems. Let's keep moving forward together towards more equitable, socially inclusive, and sustainable water governance. Thank you very much.
I have to be on stage for this to work, sorry. Thank you so much, Zilka. That was wonderful for your supportive words and your emphasis on just how critical this forthcoming dialogue is and the work that we're trying to do. So without further ado, I want to introduce the aforementioned Benjamin Kirsch, who is the project coordinator for ScaleWatt, which is a water tenure program that is funded by the German government. Benjamin is with the Land and Water Division of FAO, and he's going to talk to us a little bit more about this global dialogue. Benjamin?
Thank you very much for your kind words, Silke, and for your wonderful introduction. It's wonderful to see a room full of people and welcome also to all of us, all of you who join us online. I just want to give you a short overview of water tenure assessment, and the global dialogue. And at the end, close with an invitation to all of you to become part of this dialogue if you're not already. Just to mention a few numbers at the beginning, which Silke already mentioned, which underline the importance of this work. Globally, we have 733 million people which live in areas of high and critical water stress, which is almost 10% of the global population. By 2050, FAO estimates that we need to use 30% more water resource. The water demand will increase by 30%. Agriculture, we've heard, is a main water user, which 72% of all water abstractions are because of agriculture. So water allocation and the way we allocate water is more critical than ever, and this is what water tenure is about. Next, please. I have a clicker on the table, yes. I cannot see very well my, yeah, I will go like this. What is water tenure? We can say water tenure is the relationship, whether legally or customarily defined, between people as individuals or groups with respect to water resource. So very important, it can be formal water tenure arrangements, also customary, traditional indigenous water tenure arrangements. And they define who can use which resources for how long and under what conditions. Responsible governance of water tenure aims at protecting the legitimate rights of water users, whether they're based on formal law or customary arrangements, to enhance the transparency of information and tenure systems, improving the related policy, legal, and institutional frameworks, and finally, to reduce implementation gaps on water allocation. Now, what we have done over the last years is to come up with a methodology to assess water tenure systems, both formal and informal and customary water tenure systems worldwide, at the national level through a study of legal framework and institutions, the formal governance framework, at the local level to study informal, customary, and community-based tenure arrangements, the local level, then assessing the relative security of water tenure arrangements, how secure are rights, are arrangements, and to validate the findings at different scales through a multidisciplinary team involving lawyers, involving sociologists, anthropologists, and also hydrologists, water management experts. What we get out is our actionable recommendations to governments and and also to water users. We have done this over the last 3 years with the support of the German Ministry of Food and Agriculture in 3 countries, in Senegal, Rwanda, and Sri Lanka, and we are now working in the second phase called Scale What in Colombia and Thailand, so slowly building a global network of experiences on water tenure arrangements. But of course, FAO is not alone in this. We will hear other experiences by ELI, RRI, other actors. So we truly have a global network on water tenure. Now, what are our some findings so far? I can say in general, the recognition of customary tenure by formal laws is very, very limited, sometimes even ignored. The legal and the perceived security of water tenure can diverge quite strongly. And just to give you one example, in Sri Lanka we found that little pools, but the temples that are used for rituals were always full. There is no water right to temples, to the monks, but these are respected by the communities and by the irrigation department, which allocates this water. So this is a de facto security of water tenure, which is not based on law. Incomplete water balances undermine water tenure security. We need to know how much water we have in a given system, in a given river network basin, in order to assess how secure water tenure arrangements are. So water accounting and water tenure assessments need to go hand in hand. In-stream and environmental uses, such as fisheries, are often overlooked by formal legislation. People don't have water rights and are important. Water tenure assessments can enhance capacity and empower local users, and it can also identify pathways to better tenure security. Now, based on these findings, FAO has discussed and started this global dialogue on water tenure, which Silke mentioned, which was backed by a mandate of the FAO Committee on Agriculture 2 years ago, and included in the Water Action Agenda by FAO as a commitment. And this is based on further on work by CFS. Now, very quickly, the objectives of the global dialogue are to build a set of non-binding principles for the responsible governance of water tenure, build consensus around the principles through multi-stakeholder consultations, criteria to guide the implementation, and build capacities of countries and non-state actors to apply them. The elements of the dialogue I will not go through now. We will have a possibility to discuss, but I would like to close with a invitation to join this dialogue, to join the consultation on the roadmap of the dialogue, organize dialogue events in your countries, your regions, maybe conduct a water tenure assessment based on the methodology. Happy to discuss with you, or become a resource partner. Please get in touch. There's also a survey which you can answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benjamin. Now we'll transition into a panel discussion. Could I please have our panel members join us here on the stage, please? And I'll introduce you. Thank you. If you'd like to join us up here, someone can stand here. Thank you. Yeah, you can stand here too. Yes. Thank you. You want to join us up here? Thank you. I'll give a brief introduction. Diana Chavez Vargas, a Quechua woman from Ecuador representing the Quechua organization Pequiru. Diana is from Pastanza and is a member of the Comuna San Jacinto del Pinto. Dr. Yolanda Lopez Maldonado is an indigenous scientist whose work in nature conservation bridges natural, social, and indigenous sciences. Beatrice Nakoyoma, am I pronouncing that right? I hope so. Is Director of Fisheries and Aquaculture from Lake Tanganyika Authority. And Dr. Jennifer Wolawanta is online, is that correct?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. The light. Jennifer Molwanta Wa is a CEO of the Water Research Commission in South Africa. So thank you. Thank you for all joining for us. I want to pose a question to you. Given your experiences related to recognition and protection of indigenous community water-based tenure rights, can you highlight what you think are some of the key challenges and or opportunities for aligning Indigenous and local community and government perspectives and needs related to water tenure. Whoever wants to answer.
Okay, can I go? Yeah. Good. All right, then. Thank you very much for that question. We really have observed that the challenges that are related to water tenure and not having it officially and legally binding, it becomes a double oppression really for Indigenous people. In the South African case, we have a very progressive constitution, we have got a very progressive water law, but because the restitution of land is a program that the South African government has adopted and have made great strides around that. However, when this land is restituted, we are finding that a lot of the time there is no prosperity. Literally, where the land is restituted and it was agricultural land that was very commercially productive, you're finding that then there's nothing that can be done because the water rights is not linked to the land when it is restituted. The second challenge that we are finding there is that when people that have got the land back that has been restituted are seeking funding from the banks for development purposes, there are two critical things that are required. The first one would be obviously your certificate of tenure in terms of ownership of the land, which in most cases we are finding that you cannot have that because it is reallocated to a community, so it's communal land, so which is a challenge around that. But also, if you are looking to do agricultural project, you're seeking a water use license, for example, which then if you don't have, you are finding that that is a big challenge. So the opportunities that really this type of work brings, it's really around legal review of the Water Act and in some cases of the Constitution to ensure that this is really legally binding and can be implemented. But also we find that in terms of looking at sustainability of water resources into the future, it becomes very critical when we are looking at climate change and we are trying to integrate that into our strategies and plans, that we make this legally binding and that the opportunity is now because we are all in this process of coming up with all of these plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Is anybody else would you like to answer?
I would like to answer.
Sure.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, everyone. We almost didn't make it. Excuse me? Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. We almost didn't make it. We tried to take a different path. We tried to be adventurous, and we got lost. Please don't do that if you are in the rainforest. Okay, good morning. For the questions, I was thinking a lot about this. One of the challenges, I guess, that we have is, and I agree with you, because in Ecuador, we also have our constitution has this mandate for the prior, free, and informed consent, but there is a lack of genuine participation in consultation. So those are one of the challenges, and it has to be binding, okay? I guess there is a weak informants for our rights to be consulted, like accordingly to our own customary practices. And of course, one of the things is it has to be in our language. For example, if there is something that related to water projects when they go to the community. The other thing is, I guess, I have a presentation, but I'm going to answer this straight to the question. Just enjoy the pictures, please. The other thing is the corruption and lack of transparency. And this comes from the governments, the local governments, because we have the major, for example, we have some laws, we call them ordenanzas, and some of them they have a budget to protect the water. But sometimes that budget is not used for that, it's used for another purposes. So those are one of the challenges. And finally, the limit access and resources. And those for us as indigenous people, we need the data to continue fighting. Because one thing is here telling you that my river is contaminated, that the communities that live downstream drink that water that comes from the city. We use it to take a bath, to wash our clothes, to make our food, to cook. But I don't have data, because it will be nice to give you how many people are being affected, how many children are getting sick, and how has advanced this contaminated water, how is in the, like a historical line, and we don't have that. So we need that. Those are one of the challenges. And opportunities. I guess one of the opportunities is to have allies. And for example, we have, in my community, my organization, Pakiru, we have been working with the Nature Conservancy, and which is good, to have good allies that help us to do the capacity building and to have these resources to be able to be here, for example, advocating, to prepare people to be the monitors for our river. And of course, in my organization, one of the things is we have declared our own land as Causac-Sacha, the living forest. And one of the opportunities I'm trying to see, like, to have tools, planning tools, like give us the way that we want to have, or how we want our land to be planned, and of course, the water rights, the water tenure, how we want it to be done. So we're having advocating for this as an alternative, and this for me is an opportunity that we can talk and have a dialogue with the government, with our allies, to start doing things in our way, because everyone knows that we indigenous people have been saying a lot about, and we have been conserving also our land. All the eyes right now are in the Amazon region. I forgot to mention that, I'm from the Amazon region. So this is one of the things, to have formal tools that then I can sit and talk with the mayor, with the minister, or with the president, saying, this is the way that we want to plan our land. This is the way, how we want to proceed. And then all of us can have a say in those decision making. I'm seeing that as an opportunity, and I hope you as people also continue advocating for what we're trying to do here, over there in Ecuador, in our land. And the last challenge I want to say, we have been using also international law. That helps us a lot. Even though Ecuador has in the Constitution the rights for nature, we're the first one that have that in our Constitution. We have been using a lot the international mechanism, legal mechanisms. And then you can hear about Sarayaku, who belongs, that Sarayaku is very well known, that they are part of our organization. So we haven't used those cases to also continue fighting for our water tenure, or land, or sovereignty. That should be all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, my colleague.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, my colleague. Just to add some challenges that I see, for example, lack of assessment need to, particularly from the community level, to align with those of the governments, and also awareness to the communities. You know, we have a lot of good land tenure or laws at the national level, but local level, they don't understand them. But when the government institute the law, they are instituting at equal level from the national to the local level. So they are not aware. But lack of assessment need also can bring a gap between addressing the important issues from the local indigenous perspective, development issues. So this is also, I can see as a challenge. As far as the transboundary water concern, we see also there is also unharmonized law. Each government has different laws. But we have noticed that actually at lake coast, the coast zone of the lake for the transboundary areas, they're at equal and interrelated. So we need us to see how we can harmonize those laws at a national level. And Opportunities, yes, we can see we have community is ready if he's involved. If you don't involve them, they cannot join you. But if we involve them, let them understand, then they can join you because they feel a sense of ownership. That's the approach also TNC is also using within our Lake Tanganyika to see how we can get local community more involved in different planning for the resource users and also particularly for the fisheries. In Lake Tanganyika we developed the charter to manage the fisheries, the species which are transboundary. So we involved the fishermen from the beginning. So involve them in data collection, involve them in interpreting the data, but you also involve them in the planning, the option for managing the resources. So we have the opportunity of those also international laws that are trying to promote consideration of those indigenous and the local communities. The other challenges, maybe I forgot, is the resource from the government. The government can incorporate the international laws, but now how to institute, to implement the resources in terms of personnel, in terms of funds. So this is also the challenge I'm seeing. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity and for a very important question. My message will be very short. In terms of opportunities, I think there are a lot, because we all know in this room that indigenous peoples have been protecting and managing water resources since time immemorial in a very good way. And there is an opportunity there to learn from other groups and how to do that. In terms of the challenges, I think there are a lot of challenges. One of them is that are we also considering, for example, when we talk about water tenure, we also need to talk about the institutions. Are we going, for example, to include the supernatural institutions of indigenous peoples in how to protect water resources? And I'm talking about different entities that probably do not make sense for many scientists or politicians. The other challenge is that indigenous peoples have been observing and understanding natural phenomena and changes on the planet and how Earth systems changes, and they are also very good in adapting to those changes. So are we going to include this information, not only the knowledge, like the cosmovision and worldviews about how to protect water resources, but also the scientific knowledge, the scientific thought that is behind this information, how to observe natural phenomena, how to understand celestial bodies, how to navigate long distances. All this information is very accurate, it's very precise, and should be included to inform policy and practices. Another challenge, I will say, is that also when we talk about rights and tenure rights, we need to talk about the acquisition of obligations. Are we going to include indigenous peoples to protect water resources, but are the societies going to also help us to protect water resources in a broader scale? So that's my intervention for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful dialogue. It's amazing, just the knowledge here. You bring up some very good points. Thank you.
Hi, it's me again. I just want to also echo, thank you so much to the panelists for your thoughts. I mean, I heard a couple of really important themes. One, of course, just around engagement itself and finding new and innovative ways to have actually meaningful engagement, not only of people sort of in these processes, these global dialogues, but engagement more broadly of the ways of thinking, different ways of thinking, different types of knowledge around water tenure as we move forward and start thinking about principles to guide responsible governance. So that was really, really interesting. Thank you so much for your contributions. So can we have our presentation up? Great, thanks so much. Today, my colleague Chloe Ginsberg and I will be giving a short presentation that focuses on our findings from a tenure assessment methodology that looks specifically at communities that hold their water tenure rights collectively. So the Environmental Law Institute and the Rights and Resources Initiative have developed this tenure tracking methodology to analyze the legally recognized freshwater tenure rights of the approximately 2.5 billion Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendants, and local communities who collectively and customarily steward approximately half the world's land, but only have legal rights to own about 10% of that land and the appurtenant water resources. So it's a really critical topic. In 2020, following the development and application of our tenure tracking methodology across 15 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, we published Whose Water? There it is. We published Whose Water that goes into detail about our findings, and I want to briefly just share with you some of the high-level findings, and then Chloe will speak a little bit about some new work that we're undertaking to unpack the gendered aspects of water tenure and its relationship in particular to forest and land tenure rights of women. So the first, briefly, just the first key finding, and I'll go into this in just a moment, is that communities' freshwater tenure rights are very often dependent on their legally recognized land and or forest rights, or have what we've been calling a land-water nexus. And I'll talk about the implications of these nexuses in just a moment. But briefly, a second key finding that we have is that communities' rights to water for livelihoods uses, while they're broadly recognized under laws across many different countries, are also often burdened by procedural requirements, most often a requirement to have a permit or to form a user association before communities can actually have legally protected water use rights to conduct their livelihoods. And these administrative requirements not only place sometimes onerous financial and other burdens on communities, but they also frequently limit the duration of those rights. So even where communities' livelihoods-based water uses might be exempted from some of these permitting requirements, these exempted use rights also don't have the same legal status as other water use rights. So they're more vulnerable to third-party challenges. So the overall takeaway from this high-level finding is that there's a really strong need for some innovative solutions to the gaps that are left by these compulsory permitting systems that aren't tailored to the needs and priorities of communities. And the third thing I'll briefly touch on is the lack of protection that exists for women's specific water governance and use rights. So really briefly, I think one of the most important issues that we found, don't want to spill water, related to community-based water tenure is the fact that, again, their freshwater tenure rights are frequently dependent on their legally recognized land and or forest rights. And in some countries, this is actually the only basis for water rights for communities. In Liberia, for example, the only place you find legally recognized water rights is within the forestry and land laws. Community tenure regimes with a land-water nexus or a forest-water nexus also consistently provide recognition of a wider range of water rights than you can find in the Water Acts themselves. So for many communities, the ability to realize a full suite of water tenure rights can't be adequately safeguarded if their land and forest rights also aren't legally safeguarded and secure. The ways in which these rights are recognized also stem from a lot of different laws. It can come from water and land laws, from forest laws, agricultural, constitutional provisions. But what this really highlights is that there's a need for legal harmonization in order to make sure that these laws are speaking to one another. And in many cases, for example, land and agricultural laws will mention water, but only in passing or implicitly as part of sort of a wider set of resource rights. And water laws actually rarely speak directly to the legal status of communities' water tenure rights. So even where this land-water nexus or forest-water nexus could provide an additional avenue for communities to have their water tenure rights legally recognized, the contradictions or gaps across sectoral laws can leave those open to legal challenge and undermine the security of community water tenure. So we really need to be looking towards more integrated tenure-based approaches in order to have secure community-based water tenure. And then finally, I just want to briefly focus on the previous, the previous findings. We also focus specifically on the water use and governance rights of women within communities, and sadly, but not surprisingly, found that despite the fact that women around the world have critical water management responsibilities for both household and productive uses, I think it's important to note that women constitute 43% of the world's agricultural labor force. They're much less likely than men to have decision-making authority from the laws than, and there are considerable barriers in accessing the financial services, markets, and technologies they need to implement these rights. So what we found in our study was less than a third of the community water tenure regimes we analyzed acknowledge any governance rights for women within communities. And in many cases, national policies, plans, and legislation make no mention of gender equality objectives at all. So we really need a more specific articulation and legal requirements within water legislation, but also within the other laws that provide the basis for women's water tenure rights, the land laws, the forest laws, and those also need to be aligned and harmonized with inheritance and marriage laws. So now I'll turn it over to Chloe to talk a little bit more about how we've been building on those initial findings.
Thank you, Jess, for that introduction to our past work. If I can ask to start the video that we have on the slide. Great. So we at RRI are really excited to be launching today a new section of our online tenure tracking tool, which details all of the water tenure data that's been collected on the strength of both communities' water tenure rights and the rights of women within those community-based water tenure regimes across 15 countries. If you go to rightsandresources.org/water tenure tool on the screen, you can explore that further. Beta version, so hopefully it'll all be working out well, and we'll be having a lot more interactivity that's being built into the upcoming months as well. Secondly, we are very pleased to be sharing that in upcoming months, we and with the Environmental Law Institute will be releasing new research that will further unpack the land-water nexus for communities' rights to use and govern freshwater, and how this impacts communities' rights to use and govern freshwater, as well as the rights of women to use and govern freshwater. So this draws on long-term data that RRI's been collecting since 2012 on the strength of communities' forest tenure rights and the rights of women to community-based tenure regimes across 35 countries. But it will be expanding this evidence base on the ways in which both the land, the forest, the territorial rights legislation in these countries provides a basis for communities' collective rights to govern freshwater and the rights of women. So this will build on some of the key findings from Whose Water that Jessica shared with us. And in doing so, it will offer some new data that can also inform the global dialogue process that Benjamin shared with us earlier. So because of time constraints, we won't be sharing a lot of detail on the findings of this, but some emerging findings that are important to note is that we're still seeing a lot of the same findings from our 2020 analysis, in that this land-water nexus, in particular looking at the protection of communities' terrestrial and forest and territorial rights, can provide a strong basis for also communities' rights to use and govern freshwater. that should be considered in legal reform processes to harmonize these laws with water laws that are often much less explicit about these rights. But also, there's still a dearth of gender-sensitive protections. So with that, we will invite you to sort of keep following along and look for the release of this data in the next few months. And as we're moving towards the global principles on water tenure, it will be extremely important that we are able to build systems into this process that ensure that they are inclusive of community-based water tenure, including for Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendant peoples, local communities, pastoralists, and the women within all of these groups, and responsive to these legislative realities. So I will close there, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chloe. We now have an online presentation from Carol Mwimba. Carol is a policy advisor at World Vision International in Zambia and has been consulting with the International Water Management Institute on the CGIAR initiative on climate resilience, and is going to be sharing some of her findings from a Zambian project.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to share the work that we have been doing under the CGIAR initiative on climate resilience, which we are calling Climate. Next slide, please. The customary water tenure has already been defined.
Sorry, Carol,
but,
can you hear me? We're having a little bit of trouble understanding you.
Okay, is it the sound?
Yes, that actually sounded much better.
Okay, thank you so much. Like the first presenter has already talked about what customary water tenure is. It's basically the relations between community members, how they relate with each other with regard the water they use.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Carol. It's very difficult to understand you. I think we might switch over. I know you did a pre-recorded presentation. I think we're going to, we don't have the pre-recorded? It doesn't work. Oh dear, okay. Can you change your microphone or your headphones? Potentially take off if you're using them, or use them if you're not?
I'm not using any. Let me try and use them now.
Sorry. Okay, she's going to try with the headphones. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Bear with us for a second. We had a good connection when she first called in this morning. Are you still with us, Carol?
Yes, I'm here, but I don't know if you can hear me.
Wonderful.
Is this better?
You needed me to say that. Yes, we can hear you. Proceed. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry about that. So like I was saying, customary water tenure is the way community members relate to each other, that's the water they use. And in our study, we have noted polycentric integration, where we see that the kind of water that people rely on is actually multiple. For example, people in communities who use water for drinking and other domestic systems. They will rely on gardening, they use water for gardening, drinking, and sometimes livestock water. Also, even resources that they need are multi-sources. We have a number of groundwater sources people rely on, for example, as well. There's also aspects of surface water. We are talking of streams, rivers, and dams, but they also rely on rainwater. But it's something that we are seeing with the communities, particularly communities. For example, there is publicly owned boreholes. These are infrastructures, but also those that are self-supplied. Now, when it comes to using water in terms of when people are using this kind of water that they rely on for various reasons, they come up with different groups within the communities and sometimes the communities. We see that they come up with an idea that community members will have to come up with rules, for example, of access, where we see that if they are sharing water, they will say any household that is using the water should provide a commitment fee that is going to sustain that water resource. And sometimes during the dry periods, a number of resources will dry up and they will come up with an idea within the community saying, with the little limited resource that we have, we are going to use it only for drinking. But we continue to see that challenges exist because as I have mentioned, there's a lot of unpredictable and more extreme events. For this year, in terms of the quite a unique period, we saw a lot of drought, a lot of areas were affected by drought, and then we saw that a lot of water sources dried up. This means that for those that are quantities, there's a lot of congestion at available sources, and also sometimes conflict. Next slide, please. Now, as a solution, we came up with the recently local climate adaptation champion, which is intended to build resilience to droughts by providing solar powered board. And to come up with this process under the Climate by Initiative, a stepwise process was used. As you can see in some of those photos, there was a collaboration and initiating collaboration with the communities, just to understand the kind of water challenges they are facing, but also following that with coming up with solutions, what kind of solutions that can alleviate some of the water challenges they are facing. And once the financials were secured and was in place, we ended up having a solar powered borehole because this is what we're seeing that will address the key challenges of drinking water, livestock water, and also water for gardening. And as you can see in some of those photos, you can see that the water is available and already here. Next slide. Yeah, so with this borehole that has been implemented in one of the rural communities of southern Zambia, we have seen that it has a number of impacts on the community. For example, there's reliable water here. Like I have mentioned already, there was a lot of drought this year, a number of communities are affected, and the fact that there's a borehole available now for the community, people are able to have access to water throughout the year, and also it can modernize how people access water. A lot of women and children were always carrying heavy loads of water on their heads, trying to get water for drinking and other domestic uses. But having a number of taps that have been supported within the community, it has helped people access water easily. That's not the only thing that has happened. It has also enhanced income generation from small-scale vegetable gardening. People are no longer just growing crops for their consumption, but the surplus is also stored within the nearby town and to earn income. But we also see that there's a lot of community foundation. In this community, we have seen that people are coming up with groups where they actually share different types of access. For example, they'll say water for drinking is going to take place throughout the day, but when it comes to water for livestock, it is given 2 hours in a day. Next slide. So what we are seeing here is that for a climber borehole, there's a feasibility in replicating the climber approach and also to plan for community water tenure, and can also be replicated by the local government. But that aside, we also see that even with other projects that are coming up, the local government is not just sitting around doing nothing, but they are also supporting rural water supply infrastructure development, and then also be mobilizing community-based water tenure by allowing community participation in the planning processes on how to access the water. And that we have seen that the local government has guidelines which requires communities to apply for infrastructure jointly, really to raise a small fee that will show that communities are able to sustain this infrastructure once provided to them. But this also enhances ownership. I will end here and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carol. And if you can, it would be great if you could stay online. We're going to have room for audience question and answers. We'd love to have you there to join that discussion. So thank you so much for bearing with our technical difficulties. So we'd like to invite the panelists to come back up on stage, if they could. Please. Sorry, there's a little bit of up and down with the room construction. So we have, I don't know if you noticed, but we have the delineation here is we have a couple of representatives from government and international institutions, and then we have a couple of representatives of Indigenous communities. And so we would like to focus this next round of questions specifically on their experiences, and then we're going to open it up to you all and have a dialogue until the end of the session.
I'll ask the question here is, what do you think are the key messages that governments should be hearing about the process of Indigenous and community engagement around water tenure and the priority issues that will need to be addressed as we develop principles for responsible governance of water tenure?
And that's for our community-based representatives. So,
okay, for me?
Diana and Melissa, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. I have 5 minutes to answer this too, or just shorter? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna start with I guess the first ones. One of the messages it's to recognize the rights of nature. As in Ecuador, I already talk about this, but because this is a new alternative to approach water governance. The governments should consider ecosystem-based approaches that recognize river, lakes, and other water bodies as living entities with rights. That's how we see it, and also we Indigenous people don't divide land and water. It's everything has to be integrated and holistic. This should be one of the things to consider also. And please, we are trying to not to use water resources because it looks like you can exploit it. And for us, water is life. So right now we use, we call them elements of life, the land, the water, the sky. So that's how we have been using in my nation, the Quechua nation, just to let you know. The other thing is, I guess, we need to come back to fight against corruption and ensure the transparency for all of us. That means also NGOs, the government. We need to be transparent and to start gaining again trust, because there is a distrust already with some of us. We have been working for many years with other entities, and there is a distrust. And I guess we need to start promoting this transparency and build the trust again to continue fighting. And of course, to promote the gender equity in water governments. In my nation, we don't talk about feminism it's really hard right now. We are not at that point like you progressive countries talk about it, because for us, our key is the family. We call it ILU. If the family is okay, our communities are good, and if our communities are good, our pueblos and my nation, my organization is going to be stronger. So we have been trying to take this. For us, the role of men and women is at the same level. Looks like externally something is happening with the Western way of living, but we as Indigenous people see us as very important part of to have a society or communities. So that's why how we see it is women, of course, need to have a voice, and we have these spaces where to participate. And like me, I'm part of the council of my Indigenous organization. We have that, and we have been promoting that to have more women be part of these important leadership roles. And I guess that's one of the messages that I would like to send to the government too, or the NGOs that are here, to ensure that the participation, of course, it's have all the voices, kids, the young ones, women, of course. That means to really participatory process, and we need that also. It should be mandatory when people go to the communities to start projects to really have this, make sure of everyone, that everyone is participating. And of course, we need to strengthen the procedural rights for Indigenous and local communities. The right to prior, free, and informed consent must be fully implemented. Right now, the Ecuadorian government is passing a law about this because we have been using the international law, but the Ecuadorian law is not ready for this, but we have proposed, or Indigenous CONAIE has proposed a law for this, how to do it. So we need this to send this message. It has to be right. It has to be very participatory, to use our own language, for example. And some pueblos have already also having this own way to how they want to do it, how they want to be consulted and informed. Don't forget, it has to be both. Usually people comes already with the project in mind and just ask with us, like, this is already done, you just have to say yes, and that shouldn't be the way. We should work together in how we want the project to be, for example. And usually the decision making is from people up the offices and not on the land and the territory. That message is also, I would like to send it. We need to be more aware of how we're doing things and start doing something different. And I guess that's why Indigenous people are telling everyone, just try to see the alternatives and all the knowledge that we have and try to be there. And the last thing about, I forgot to mention before, science. Indicators, please. Use the indicators of Indigenous people, not only for numbers, but try to put examples. I'm going to give you an example. Birds, the type of birds that are part on that ecosystems, animals that we have, what is happening. And we have been promoting our own indicators. And I know that in the north you have strong indicators to measure the quality of the water, but just taking from the water. For us, is the whole thing, the whole ecosystem has to be good. So don't forget to add those indicators too when you're measuring the state of the water, for example. That's all.
Thank you very much, my colleague.
Hold on, sorry, actually, the first round of questions was actually for our two community-based. You have a separate question in just a moment. Okay. So we'll let Yolanda answer, and then I'll ask you your question.
I'm sorry. I think there are different messages that governments should be aware or should be hearing. And that is that when we talk about, for example, participatory approaches or when working alongside Indigenous communities, Indigenous peoples, participation could be at different levels. So being in a place, in a workshop, or sitting here and having us to speak, this is a certain level of participation. But we really need to include indigenous perspectives and understanding of the systems. Also, in relation to the inclusion of indigenous knowledge, we all the time talk about how indigenous peoples are the protectors of the planet and how we protect nature, etc. But we really need to work with indigenous peoples indicators. We really need to include indigenous peoples information on the state of the art, on the status of nature, how ecosystems are degraded. Also, we really need to include how is this understanding of the natural system. For example, when I work in Yucatan, Mexico with Mayan communities, the Mayas were a water-oriented society that they were very good in managing groundwater resources and understanding how the ecosystem function. And this information should be included, for example, on the water balances of specific regions, because our colleague from FAO, he commented that incomplete water balances undermine water tenure security. So we really need to work with the communities because they are the knowledge of the resource. And finally, also was mentioned in the previous question that capacity building is very important, and also the inclusion of indigenous scholars. I work on hydrology, but there are many other hydrologies, so they should be also part of this consultation process and these activities. Also, we have very well prepared academics, indigenous academics, and I think the perspective they can bring to the table is very important, and I would say is of utmost importance nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those insights. And I think now to turn it over to the, we have someone from government and someone from an international institution with us right now. And what I'd like to ask you is, hearing from our Indigenous participants, from our community participants, need for stronger levels of participation, hearing what you said earlier about the need for stronger laws around engagement, and really embedding that in more articulate provisions to require better engagement, but also all of these wonderful insights around engaging with Indigenous science and ways of thinking. I would ask you, what should or can governments and international institutions be doing to facilitate the improved recognition and protection of all legitimate water tenure rights?
Okay, thank you for that good question. I think government and international institution are supposed to, for to improve the situation, is they should involve the community in the planning and also in the implementation. But during the planning, they should consider, go down to the grassroots to get to know the real needs of those communities. Because if we are going to implement something which is not their need, then we will get poor involvement. So we need government, they need to understand each need of each category of the group: women, youth, children. But also, they need to harmonize those laws. You know, sometimes there's a contradiction between land and the water laws. There are a lot of contradictions, so they need to harmonize. This is the ministry, different ministries with the different laws working on the same resource for the land, the water, so there's a lot of contradiction. So they need to harmonize, but you also create awareness to the community so that they get to understand the new laws, but also implement the projects that are tangible to the communities and that can sustain after the phase out of the project. So if the project comes with a lot of workshops, a lot of training on papers, after 3 years when you come back to ask to evaluate, there was a project 5 years, what did you benefit from it? They have already forgotten even the name of the project. Mm-hmm. So we need to really implement the project which are tangible, can change the life of the communities in terms of water infrastructures, in terms of land infrastructures, and also the appropriate or good practice of the water use and the land use. But also, the government can see how to regulate those land tenure and the water for giving access to vulnerable groups, access to women. For example, we are imposing the laws that can restrict the use of water in a certain level from the coast shore of the lake, and that area women cannot reach there, or children cannot reach there. So I think we need also government and the international institution to look all of those things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jennifer?
Yes. I think from my perspective and from our country perspective, it's that firstly, we really are having a very impatient community because, as I've said, with all these progressive laws, the actual impact and the changing of lives that Indigenous people also are talking about is really not being realized. So we are having serious challenges where people are actually grabbing land, occupying it forcefully, utilizing water without following the right processes. And that impatience, I think, really means that the government really needs to get into grips with the fact that people are being impatient. In South Africa, we're really also well known for the negotiation and negotiating processes. I've just seen also with the presentation that we just had, the steps of community engagement, over-engagement, but communities are also getting fatigued by over-engagement because we keep coming back, we keep listening, they keep raising their issues, we keep going back and coming back with a new project and a new process and a new way and a new consulting company. So all of that really should be, we believe from my side, that it should really ring a bell to say that, you know, this level of impatience and lack of impact is really going to get, and we are seeing that there's a lot of instability in my country, particularly where people feel the reconciliation process was really not for us Black people. It was just a show, and it's the best story that's been told all over the world, but really the impact at community level is really not being seen that much. But we also have done quite a number of research projects, and that I want to mention that. For example, we have looked at how do we operationalize hybrid water law with the IMWI to implement historical justice. And that project actually was followed by another one where we are trying to align water allocation reform processes for more equitable development in South Africa, as well as looking at how to decolonize water access and allocation as a renewed effort to address persistent inequalities. Now, we are a research institute, we are an entity of a department of government, of a ministry. It's very much important to look at the research outcomes because all of the work has been done and all of the recommendations that have been made have to really be incorporated into the laws and the reviews and the processes of how we do. One of the recommendations is that we have what we call general authorization, which is a legally binding authorization. You don't have to do applications because where people have to apply for licensing and access to what is very expensive. So when you generally authorize it, it really gives the rights to people and have also a differentiated process where the next step would talk to, if you are seeking more water, then how do you follow that process? But also we have seen in South Africa how community-based schemes can actually work, where Indigenous people have already been utilizing water in a sustainable manner for themselves, where we have not yet reached them in terms of access to drinking water and, you know, infrastructure tap in the yard. We have seen how they've used their indigenous knowledge to sustain themselves, and we need to start integrating these processes and seeing how they can also be legalized, these schemes. And also we are saying we have to recognize, though, I must say, you know, it's all not all bad. We really have got some success stories around our different ministries working together, for example, rural development, working together with water development, where there are processes where you are able to be given a grant for a specific time lease within those communities, and with the grant then you can, you know, implement agricultural projects. However, there's still some limitations where we're finding that the linking of then those produce to the markets. So it's always one step forward, two steps backwards, but we really have to ensure that there is meaning in terms of the work that's been done. I think it is critical to continue to mobilize and advocate under the United Nations, in particular for ourselves, under the African Union agenda, so that this is not just rhetoric, but it is real and it can be make a real impact. And it has to also be brought to the attention through the media, and we must not stop talking about it at platforms like this, where we also have got opportunity to learn from each other and to influence each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all of you. And Jennifer, that's incredibly inspiring. And I do hope that the lessons that you're talking about, that we've heard from all of you in terms of your experiences that we're trying to get from these water tenure assessment processes, that building in those lessons and creating platforms for mutual learning and building on those things through the global dialogue is a real opportunity that we have. And so inviting everybody to come together and help us build those platforms effectively so that we can be taking those lessons and not throwing them away, as well as I think integration was the word of the day, participation, inclusion, and integration in terms of not only the laws and the rights themselves, but also, as you said, for communities not to feel fatigued and overwhelmed, that you know, understanding what the messages are, being clear, and coming with an integrated approach to these things is really critical. So thank you all so much. I'm going to ask you if it's okay to stay up here. We're going to open up to questions from the audience now, and we also have some folks online. I don't know if we have any online questions, but please, anyone around the room.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, we only have one mic.
Hello, my name is Nina Kicking. I'm from the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. The lady from Ecuador mentioned, the Quechua lady mentioned the indigenous indicators that we should also take into consideration. Now, I think there is probably very many indigenous societies indicators, so where can we find them? How can we best learn about them? And how can we integrate them into an approach? Sure. With a follow-up also with regards to the equal or the representation of youth and women when we approach indigenous societies, how can we do that while maintaining the representation that is considered appropriate by the indigenous community themselves? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to start asking the second one. One of the things that you should do is first recognize the indigenous organization, because they represent all the communities and they have been elected in a democratic process. Usually some organizations just go straight to the communities. So we have been requesting the respect of our indigenous organization. That should be one of the things that then you are getting sure that you are talking with the people that has been recognized by the communities, and then from there start working. Second, to ensure, of course, it's, and somebody here already said it, just try to work and hire indigenous people. They are going to give you a lot of tips on how to approach the indigenous community. That has to be done. In Ecuador, in the Amazon region, we have a law that the 70% of the people that is being employed has to be from that region. So I guess every organization should also have that rate, for example, to have indigenous people be part of their organizations in the government or the NGOs. And then you can be sure that you are doing correctly. I guess that responds the second, and the second question. For the first, we talk with the elders, and I have been learning a lot from the elders about these indicators. We met with the vice minister, I guess, from the water in Ecuador, and we were talking with him about these indicators. It sounds weird, but you just have to talk with the elders. They are the wiser, they have the knowledge, And they give me, I know the names in Spanish, I don't know the names in English, I'm sorry, but the types of birds that you should find in the river, for example. The frogs, the name of the frogs, some trees, for example, that when you see that, you can know that that river is good. So that's why we have and we want to implement these indicators. That's one of the things. And second, just remember the Quechua people, we always talk about the summa causa, the good living. And this comes from an elder. He said, good living, for example, is to wake up in the morning, to go and eat your own food, and go to the river, take a bath, and come back to your house. That's good living. And for all of us, maybe that get used to the Western way of living sounds ridiculous. But for us, that should be good living. You have your own resources, and you trust that when you're taking the bath, the river is good, right? So implement those. Try to work with the elders in that indigenous communities. They have that knowledge. It's already there. Please don't ignore that knowledge. And I want you just to say one phrase. I forgot. I invite you, all of us, all of you, to reflect how each of us can be a river, flowing with the strength to protect what is sacred: water, life, and the living forest, please.
Do any of our other panelists want to provide an answer for those questions? Anyone else?
I think from me and what you are saying, I mean, when we are thinking around our ecosystems and what you've just mentioned, we just have a different way of interpreting it, but right, it's talking out to the biodiversity, it's talking to what we have in South Africa, such as the CES, mini CES, where we're actually involving communities in monitoring the river. So at the WRC, we've developed a very simplified way of just collecting and counting the number, and when you put that, then it can talk. But what we are struggling with, and what you are saying to us and challenging us to become a river, it's having actual communities adopting the rivers as they pass, because the responsibility, it's not of somebody sitting in an office somewhere, it's really everybody's participation. And I think also from our side, as there are many challenges that are facing communities, the Western way, as you are saying, has also impacted in how we deal with the rivers and how we should be protecting them. And my call is really around modernization, such as in our country, we've got the big challenge of disposable diapers, where most women, for example, do not want to throw it in your bin because it will smell. Then you package that and you put it at the furthest place, but because you're putting it somewhere in the field, it's going to end up in the river, which then that's causing pollution. That's continuing to also absorb the water. So we really have to strike that balance. But it's important around the education and the awareness to make sure that also we integrate indigenous ways into modern ways, and that's very critical. Thank you.
Other questions from the audience? Here we go.
Hi, my name is Eliana Galarza. I'm originally from Bolivia. I'm representing Wageningen University today. I have a question for Ecuador or any other panelists that could or want to reply this. So I know that legally binding instruments or mechanisms are used to protect and promote the community rights or customary rights of indigenous peoples. And in the case of Ecuador, it's very interesting because they have the rights of nature as a pioneer, etc. But I wonder, has been at some point against to the traditional or customary indigenous people's right? When it's challenging to implement both? When can both be contrasting? Because in general terms, the rights of nature is to protect nature and the whole ecosystem, we can say. Or in this case, on the case in the river, for instance, when a river gets this subject of rights, how is when it's translated in the field, in the in the territory. Some communities can or may be negatively affected. Can you please elaborate a little bit more? I think this is very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, actually, we are just have a lawsuit right now. It's going on. Papyrus is part of a lawsuit against the city of Puyo for violating the rights of nature because they are polluting our river, the Puyo River. And my community is from that, we live from that river. So this legal action against the city, it's undergoing through using the public defender. It's free, you can, and they're supposed to be in our side. And so we use that to seek, to hold the municipality, the mayor, accountable for violating this river. And actually they need that, the municipality. They also, he can say, the mayor can say, yeah, of course, let's do this, let's put some budget to do something about that, right? But he, right now, he said, no, I'm not gonna do anything. Go to the judge, do this, what we are doing, and if the judge give you the sentence and he says that we have to do something to repair the river, for example, they are going to do it. So because they need a justification to use the budget to do something and fix what is happening right now in the city. That's how we use this law. And we have seen cases, really 2 cases that won that in other cities, and right now we're going with that, using these mechanisms to fight and protect the river. So we are using it now, so that's the answer.
We have time for one very, very brief question, and then we've actually, unfortunately, got to come to a close.
Mine's not a question, but I'm from the Yukon next to the Alaska border. We have self-government and land claims agreements. If you can look under Chapter 14 is water management, and Yukon First Nation has a lot of rights under it. But we just going to be a good example. We had a large gold mine that the water dam broke and cyanide and stuff is going into the river. And this has happened, what, in the last week? This couple weeks. So keep an eye on it. Yukon, the gold mine, what's it called? Victoria Gold. And the local First Nation, many First Nations people along the river. So how would the UFA affect that? That would be a good question, so how strong that UFA, the umbrella final agreement, our land claims agreement would be. So it's something to watch. And courts have been very, very good to our First Nation people in Canada, so maybe we can use that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, unfortunately, we are just about out of time, so can we give another round of applause for our panelists? And thank you all for those insightful questions and comments. I'm going to turn it over to Ben to close us out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ben.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jess. Thanks to all of you for your participation. Thanks very much to the panelists and the presenters for this wonderful, insightful, and very lively session. As Jess has said it before, I think the word of the day here is integration. I mean, what is water tenure? Water tenure about? It's to integrate, and we've heard. Just to share some things that we heard: integrate rights to use and duties to protect the resources. Integrate knowledge on how can we measure this through indicators, also indigenous indicators. Where I come from, we say bio indicators. Integrate and harmonize different laws that deal with water resource and that give rights to water and which are not very well aligned in many cases, which causes conflicts. And finally, integrate the people that use water resources in governance processes. Integrate local local communities, integrate different water use sectors in water governance. I think these are some of the key things that came out of today's debate. Finally, I would like to reiterate my invitation to you to participate in the upcoming global dialogue events. In December, there will be a first preliminary dialogue in Asia, in Bangkok, but also we're organizing dialogue events in other countries and regions. There are some cards here in front on the table with the QR code that I showed in the beginning that you can use to get in contact with us. Thank you again to all the organizers of this sessions. We are an engaged expert group of many different people. You're also welcome to join our expert group. Please get in touch with us. And yeah, with that, I would like to close the session. I wish you a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and hopefully we have some time also to exchange. I think most of us are here the whole week, so yeah, we can always get together. Thank you very much. And finally, one image that I really liked is this image of trying to imagine to become a river sometime. I think this is something that we could keep in mind.